necessary to return to the negotiations until after this batch of budget bills is to you and decided? How come?
Well, I haven't been asked to return. I mean, I don't know why this has all been placed on me. I said I'd return as soon as I vetoed all the bills. I received 5 of them. I totally understand and respect the personal tragedies that have resulted in Senator Nelson not being able to participate. I understand Senator Pratt's going off tomorrow for whatever reason. So, I mean, that's the House has passed the other 5 bills. I don't know when the Senate is going to send them to me. I'll turn them around as rapidly as possible, and we can begin our negotiations.
What bills do you have now, Governor, and are you ready to
I have
act on those today?
Agriculture, state governments, environment,
and E12.
HHS, and which?
E12.
E12.
Will you veto those?
I'm working on the letters this afternoon, this evening, and I'll issue the letters and the vetoes tomorrow morning before I go fishing.
On the boat?
No, I'm not going to veto on the vote, no. Not in front of the Speaker and the Majority Leader.
Can I go back to Senator Gazelka? He's asked for a meeting with you. Will you tell us why you don't want to do that?
I heard indirectly when in a meeting, and I said that I would meet with him either Saturday afternoon or Sunday evening, which I understood to be an unofficial meeting of the 2 of us, and then he came back, so he wanted to have the Speaker. Well, then I would want to include Senator Bach and Representative Hortman, and then we might as well sit down on early Monday, first thing Monday, if that's the case. And if I haven't received all the bills because of these personal delays, then we can start the discussion on the bills that I have vetoed, and as soon as I get the others, which I assume will be early Monday, if they want to expedite the process, they should have a Senate session either Saturday or Sunday. I mean, it's their responsibility to get these bills to me. This is the course of action that they chose. I didn't choose this action. This is the course of action they decided upon, so they're responsible for carrying it out.
Governor, is there action likely to lead to you not finishing the work on time?
Well, we have 8 days starting Monday, which is plenty of time to resolve the budget issues. And if they keep 609 policy provisions out of those bills, then I think we can readily get it finished by May 22nd. If they're going to include 609 policy provisions, we'll be here till January.
Governor, what difference does it make that you'll be negotiating bills that have been vetoed and returned to the legislature rather than negotiating as you were prior to Tuesday, bills that were parked in conference committee? Is there a difference at all?
Well, as a practical matter, I'm going to finish the veto letters tonight, issue them tomorrow morning. I'm going to St. Cloud for the fishing opener, the community picnic tomorrow afternoon, and then evening events, and Saturday, and then fishing, and then Sunday's Mother's Day. So, I mean, as a practical matter, I don't see how we could start before Monday morning anyway.
What difference does it make in terms of the substance of the negotiations with which you've gone through this exercise?
What difference did it make that they decided to pull out of the negotiations? They pulled out, and they decided we went to pass all these bills. And so I'm not going to take the blame for the fact we're not meeting to negotiate. I've been here all week. I've been here every night, or available to continue the negotiation. But I said before they made this decision, I said if they're going to go the route of passing the bills, sending me a veto, then I'm not going to resume negotiations until that's complete. And again, I'm willing to be flexible in terms of the bills that haven't reached me yet, which is not anybody's fault, and we can start with those that are.
Governor, has this been described to you? Has the changes they've made to the transportation area satisfied your concerns, or do you feel like that's still problematic?
They haven't provided the $85 million, which I've said for weeks is the minimum necessary for Metro Transit. That's what the Metropolitan Council and the transit people say they have to have. Continue just the same level of bus service in the metropolitan area. The Metro Council, changes are poorly thought through, controversial. Metro cities oppose them. And, you know, they just sort of took one legislator's ideas and decided to put that through without considering the consequences. They have a part-time part-time chair. I learned through my 2 terms, we started out with a part-time chair and then realized the absolute necessity of a full-time person. And the board selects the chair. I'm fine with that. But somebody's got to be in charge there on a day-to-day basis. And it should be somebody under the immediate direction of the board. The light rail prohibition, I was first told, they took out everything they told me, except for the prohibition on the legislative funding, state funding if the legislature didn't previously approve. They told me specifically a couple of times that was not going to affect Southwest, only affect future projects. And then they came back yesterday morning after they'd finagled the bill at the end and said, well, no, it is going to include Southwest. So they went back on what they had proposed before. So for all of those reasons, I will not sign the bill. I want a transportation bill. I think we can get to one if they will square up with what Metro Transit needs and with what they promised me.
The speaker yesterday seemed to think that you are on board with changing the governance of the Metropolitan Council, having elected leaders from local cities and counties sit on it. And are you on board with that?
I get more things attributed to things that I said or didn't say. I think it's much better for these a whole process if people just speak for themselves. I've said I'm open to changing the complexion of the Metropolitan Council as long as it takes effect January 5th of 2019. I've raised my objections to this particular one. I think a 27-member board is unworkable. I think having a part-time chair would be very damaging to the effectiveness of the organization, and my suggestions have been ignored. So I'm open to changing it, but it's got to be done in a thoughtful way. I suggested putting it off till next year. If it's going to take effect in January of 2019, it doesn't have to pass this year. It could pass next year and still take effect. And give it a lot more forethought. There have been a number of different recommendations from the Citizens League and all the number of different legislators, a number of different groups, and just to pick one and say, okay, this is it, because we want to reform the Metropolitan Council, put it on our brag sheet, is really, poorly thought through, ill-advised, and I wouldn't support it.
The DFLers on the floor called the HHS bill reprehensible, infuriating. They accused Republicans of complete indifference to desperate parents. You're going to veto it. What are your primary issues with it? That's a giant bill. There's a lot you could talk about. What are your biggest issues with that bill?
Well, they care about the tax bill and the transportation bill. Those are the ones they care about, they've spent some time on, they know the details. That's $1.15 billion in the tax bill, $372 million in the transportation bill taken out of the general fund. That's over the $1.5 billion surplus we have projected for the next biennium. The rest of it are all numbers. I asked them, you want to cut state governments by $40 million? Where do you want to cut? We don't make these things up. So we do the things the legislature and previous governors have assigned state agencies to do. So if you don't want them to do $40 million of things you've mandated legislatively, then tell us what are those 40 million. They haven't responded. They pick a number. So Health and Human Services was minus $470 million. I mean, just pick a number. And to think that's not going to have severe effects on real lives of people in Minnesota who are dependent on these services and programs and payments. I mean, but they won't specify where they are. That's one of the reasons I said to them, and last time we met for negotiations on Tuesday, I said, we provided the first 4 bills, our offer, based on a detailed delineation of where those reductions would come. I said, you come back tomorrow and you make the first offer on E12, on human services, on environment, what was the other, state govs. And tell us with specificity where you want to make these reductions. I mean, they backed out at that point of the negotiations, and I think that's one of the reasons. These are numbers to them. They're just numbers to fit on a piece of paper to secure the tax bill and the transportation bill, and they don't know much about anything else. They don't care about anything else. The offer they made on Tuesday for E12 was $372 million. 2% on the formula for 2 years is $371 million. So they want to fund that and nothing else for education. I mean, it's just, you're dealing with a level of absurdity here and a level of just irresponsible indifference to the needs of Minnesota. It's really shocking.
Governor, while Rachel reminds you that you're insanely popular, I've been talking to farm country legislators.
She'll never live that down.
There's so much I can't live down at this point.
I've been talking to farm country legislators today who totally disagree with that. They say you're declaring war on agriculture, over not allowing a buffer delay and mainly the delay, and also the neonic pesticide issue, which they say, I've been told one of the chairmen said you should fire the staffer who sent out an email dealing with that because it was totally false, and your commissioner of agriculture already agreed to what was in the bill.
No, he didn't agree with what he said. He's negotiating with them to try to find a compromise. What they said to me on that and the discussion was, well, if one of our farmers on Friday wants to spray and he can't reach the state agency, the ag department, because it's a weekend, and he goes out and sprays, then the ag department could come in on Monday and prosecute him. And Dave Ferguson said, you know, get real. You know, we're not going to go out and police this issue. We're just going to, you know, require that there be the protections for our public. I mean, this stuff is serious poison. And, you know, to say the Department of Agriculture should not have a regulatory authority over the contents and the reporting of these matters is just, you know, really against the public interest. So is that declaring war on farmers? I don't think so. I don't think requiring the buffer legislation we passed 2 years ago that's going to take effect in November after we've offered all sorts of compromises. We took out the private dishes. DNR reviewed all of its designations and corrected the mistakes. Anybody who objected to a designation, the DNR has taken personal attention. I think it's like 41 or something. They changed every one of them. Bowser just come out and said, these are alternative practices you can use instead of the 50-foot or 16-foot, which I don't think many farmers know about yet, but that we're going to have these community meetings all over the state in August, September before the bill takes effect, and we'll do everything we can to let people know there are these alternatives. There's funding through CREP, and if they'll fund CREP, there'll be more money for farmers to the cost of this transition. I mean, what more do I need to do? And we had an agreement at the end of last session with the changes we made, the concessions, that was satisfactory. And this bill was going to take effect. And, you know, a few people who are screaming about it are not representative of the 60% of the counties, 75% of the counties where there's already compliance between 60% and 100% of the land. And it's like, you know, we're not making this up. We're not just doing this as sort of a discretionary item. This is the public safety. This is people in Minnesota who deserve clean water to drink, who assume they have it and aren't getting it. And they don't want to do anything about it for just, you know, another year and then another year and then another year. No. We're going to start with the law. It's been on the books. Next, if there are real world problems with it, then we'll come back next session and deal with the real world stuff, but not with all this fear mongering that's going on by a few people. And if they don't like it, then they don't like it. My job is to represent the people of Minnesota, all the people of Minnesota. I'm not declaring war on anybody. That's just ridiculous.
And usually the ag bill and the ag issues are the easier ones to solve, and I'm hearing today, if you folks can't agree on this, this is not a good sign for the rest of the budget.
Well, I think we're close on the dollars. It's not that much, you know, it's 9.9 million. The midpoint is, which is what Speaker suggested we start from, is 4.9 million, and I offered 5 million, and I offered to have the Speaker, the Speaker's designee and state Senator Gazelka and Commissioner work out the pesticide language, and then we wanted to put some fees on. They're opposed to requiring the pesticide companies like Monsanto to pay an additional $75. You think Monsanto can afford to pay an additional $75? I mean, this gets to be just so absurd. And if they don't pay for it, then the people of Minnesota have to pay for it. So, you know, we're involved in these details that really are just, I just, it boggles my mind, the stuff that some of the stuff that they have come up with, because one or two constituents are screaming about something, and so they're going to take that predicament and apply it to the entire state of Minnesota. It's terrible policymaking.
Governor, given all of these differences, what's going to change between now and Monday that leads you to believe you can get done in 8 days that you
Well,
haven't
we have
done?
to. We have to get a resolve. They have a constitutional obligation to send me budget bills that I can sign by the end of Monday, May 22nd. So, you know, they send me bills now. I already said I'm not going to sign for a whole variety of reasons. If they want to get serious about working this out, we have 8 days starting on Monday to resolve. If we're focused on the budget differences, we have to resolve those. I'll have to agree to compromises. They'll have to agree to compromises. And if we keep the budget bills for what their intended purpose is, which is the budget, and take all the policy garbage out, and most of it can carry over to next year, they're all the bills that they've rolled in here all remain intact for next year, or they can bring in new ones, then we'll get it done. If they want to, you know, drag it out and debate every one of these policy positions because of whatever reasons, then I'm very pessimistic.
Will you be doing some work at the fishing opener on this as well?
I'm going fishing. No, I got major pressure on me to catch a fish. But I'm working tonight, I'm working tomorrow on the bills that we have so far, and, you know, I've got meetings, I've had meetings all day today, all day yesterday with staff on various aspects of it. We have more this afternoon on the budget side of things, so, you know, we'll be prepared on Monday to come in and make a further offer on each of the areas, and, you know, there's plenty of time if we keep the focus on the budget to get the budget completed.
Governor, are you going to be going fishing for fish with the leaders instead of a deal and on Saturday? And if so, what is this going to be? The Love Boat or Mutiny on the Bounty, or what is it? What is it going to be?
Mutiny on the Bounty. Well, if you see somebody go overboard, then I'd be suspicious as to the cause. You know, I expect it to be social. You know, we're going to go fishing. That's in the spirit. I had been fishing with Senator Bach and Speaker Dowd, you know, was it 2 years ago? We caught a lot of fish, so we didn't have a lot of time to talk about anything else. You know, I don't anticipate we're going to be doing any serious negotiating.
Do you think that it might at least, I don't know, loosen things up a little bit and then perhaps pave the way toward a more constructive discussion on Monday?
I get along very well personally with each of them. We just have very significant differences, and they represent caucuses with very significant differences and views for myself. So, you know, they got a job to do, I got a job to do, people to represent. But, you know, on a personal level, we can fish amicably together for Saturday morning.
Governor Dayton?
On public radio a few weeks ago that you can't veto everything. Are you getting pressure from Democrats in the state to basically say no to everything? And you're trying to prepare them to say, eventually you're going to have to say yes?
I just signed 10 bills this morning. I signed a bunch of other bills, you know, I mean, I vetoed the 2 abortion bills and I think 2 others for specific reasons. I'm going to veto the budget bills because I said I would, and because each one of them contains things that are just unacceptable to me and against what I consider to be the best interests of the people of Minnesota. We get bills that, again, focus on the budget rather than on all this other policy stuff, then I expect we'll work those out and I'll be able to sign them. That's my desire, is to be able to sign them.
Follow up on that, Governor. Did I understand, would you clarify, please, on preemption, campaign finance, and economic status of women? Did I understand you to say you're going to veto all the bills that include those?
I will veto the preemption because I think it's bad policy to take over the decision-making authority of local governments, which is usually a Republican doctrine, and to lock in a minimum wage of $9.50, which is $19,000 a year, which is $5,000 below the federal poverty level for a family of 4. I've always thought the minimum wage should be at least enough that it should be $12.50, that a person working full-time can support a family of 4, at the poverty level and then move up with more training and experience alike. So to lock it in and to strip away the other employee benefits that the councils of St. Paul and Minneapolis have voted is just the business community coming in and trying to strip away and keep people from improving the quality of their lives. The election measures, I've said before, just as Governor Plenty did, that I will not sign anything changing election law or election financing without broad bipartisan support, which that bill lacks. And I just learned this morning about this matter on the legislative office, the economic status of women, and I mean, it's one person, and they said, well, didn't you bring it up on the House or Senate floor? No, it wasn't discussed there. According to what I was told, they slipped this in after the votes were taken in the conference committee, which, you know, I used to think was, well, illegal, at least a violation of the rules. It's certainly a violation of principle of good government that you only discuss in conference committee things that have been brought up, voted upon in either the House or the Senate floor. That's what they do in Washington. That's why some of those bills are so putrid in Washington. They can go back behind closed doors and come back with a conference report that has major special interest provisions that nobody voted on in the House or the Senate. The prescription drug bill for seniors back in 2003, 4, you know, went behind closed doors and came back with $10 billion of subsidy for the private health plans to compete with Social Security, and with a prohibition on CMS negotiating, requiring and lower drug prices. Now we have these escalating drug prices, and you know, some of the folks out there who passed this legislation are wringing their hands saying, oh my goodness, such a problem with rising prescription drug prices. Well, yeah, you opened the door. That's the kind of stuff that goes on behind closed doors in conference committees, and that's why it shouldn't be allowed in Minnesota.
I'm sorry, can you go back to preemption? You avoided using the veto word before. When did you reach this conclusion?
Well, I've reached a conclusion. I'm trying. I don't know. Track back. I've told other groups I oppose it. I don't know if I use it. I try not to use the veto word till we get to the end of the session because see what we can work out. But I have said for weeks that I oppose it.
So you're non-negotiable on preemption. There's nothing in other labor law that they could offer you to make you.
Well, I've said to groups, you know, I think this is, in terms of policy, at least I believe, I'm told, the number one priority of the Minnesota Chamber, the Business Partnership, and therefore the Republican caucus. If we get down to an end game and we got, I don't want to suggest to them tactics, but I'm sure they've thought of this, if they have preemption and 10 other terrible things, and they say, we'll drop 9 of them for this. I mean, I can't promise that that's not an agreement I'll have to reach. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be boxed in that corner. I just want to keep the policy stuff out of the budget bills. That's why they put them in the budget bills, because they know if I send it as a standalone, veto it, and then we're done with it. They can bring it up next year, but you know, that's not the tactic they're using.
So on preemption, you just sort of reopened the door to negotiation on preemption that could potentially get you to sign it. Are you saying you're going to veto it, or still not 100%?
If it comes to me as standalone, I'll veto it. If it comes to me in one of these bills, budget bills, I'll veto it. And, you know, I can't forswear that something won't require me. As a compromise, you agree to things you don't agree with. And I strongly oppose that, and I'll do everything I can to keep it out of whatever the final agreement is. And I'm, you know, cognizant that the others who want it very badly will press for it. And I'm not going to predict the outcome of that exchange.
I spoke to Representative Davids yesterday, and he accused you of trying to run out the clock by only presenting 4 bills, by going fishing. His quote to me was, he doesn't understand who he's dealing with. He doesn't seem to understand that we are not going to play his game. If the governor wants to shut down again like in 2011, that's up to him. We're doing our job. What's your response to that?
Well, I think that's part of their tactic. They're going to send me these bills. Rather than negotiate them and send me bills like I would be able to sign, they're sending the bills so we can say, see, we completed our work on time, now it's all the governor's fault. I mean, you know, the blame game doesn't go over well with people in Minnesota. They want this work done. They don't want to have their whole summers put in jeopardy of state employees, their work. Commissioner Landwehr said June 5th, they're going to have to start telling people that they're not going to accept reservations for the month, for the parks for the month of July, because if they accept them, they have to reimburse the $7.50 they owe to the processor. So, I mean, that was serious money. I mean, it's going to really begin to impact people's lives, as it did in 2011. And I don't, you know, they can blame, you know, who can blame, but I think people are going to say, pox on all of you. We send you to get the job done, and I would maintain we can get the job done if they could straighten out the budget bills and deal with budget. And if you look at what's in those budget bills that I vetoed, I can point to dozens of things that are just extreme. And again, Health and Human Services, $470 million reduction. Where? From whom? They changed some, you know, numerical assumptions which are not valid on what inflation is going to be for medical costs and life for these people that need to be served and by law are entitled to be served. And they claim that's the savings. I mean, it's just numbers games for them with everything except the taxes and transportation, which are numbers, but they.
Governor, this is your last two-year budget that you're setting in office. Does that add anything to this for you?
That's my disappointment that we're back where we were in 2011. I was hoping for a better legislative process with a different outcome, but that's the will of the people in November last year. And, you know, I say politics is a playground where you don't get to pick your playmates. You just deal with whoever shows up, and we're dealing with who's shown up, and we're going to make the best of a bad situation. But again, Minnesotans shouldn't be surprised. They send a closely divided legislature, you know, given the real extremes and differences between the candidates and myself. I mean, people shouldn't be surprised that this is very difficult to resolve. And you know, their views are sincerely held. Mine are sincerely held. The DFL legislators sincerely held. I mean, this is a process that's unavoidable given the political makeup of the legislature and the governor, and people have to be tolerant of that. We'll get it done. Thank you.